not the type of person who believes in ghosts. Never was. I'm 54 years old, been driving trucks for almost 30 years, and I always thought those stories were just things people made up to scare each other. But what happened to me back in 2017 still keeps me awake some nights. I was heading home to Fallon after a long haul from Sacramento. I'd been on the road for 3 days and just wanted to get back to my wife and kids. It was around 9 p.m. when I hit Highway 50 east of Carson City. Most people call it the loneliest road in America, and they're not wrong. Once you get past a certain point, it's just you and the darkness. The weather was clear that night, but cold. Cold for Nevada in October anyway. Temperature was right around 38 degrees. I had my heater going and some country music playing low. Just relaxing. I was looking forward to sleeping in my own bed. I was about 20 miles past Austin when I saw someone on the side of the road up ahead. At first I thought it was a deer. You see a lot of wildlife out there at night. But as I got closer, I realized it was a woman, standing right on the edge of the pavement with her thumb out. Now I've seen hitchhikers before in my years of driving, but never on this road, never at night. There's a reason they call it the loneliest road. Nobody's out there, especially not women alone at night. I slowed down to get a better look. She was wearing a white nightgown, thin cotton, the kind of thing that would offer zero protection against the cold. She had long, dark hair that covered most of her face, and she was just standing there perfectly still, not waving, not jumping to stay warm, just standing like a statue. My gut told me to keep driving. Something felt wrong, really wrong. But then I thought about my own daughter who was about her age. What if that was her out there? What if her car broke down and she was freezing and scared? So I pulled my truck onto the shoulder about 100 feet past her and stopped. I watched in my side mirror as she walked toward me. The way she moved was strange, like she was glitching, hard to explain, like a video that keeps skipping frames. She'd take a step and then kind of lurch forward. I rubbed my eyes, figuring I was just tired. She reached the passenger door and I leaned over to push it open. The second she climbed in, the temperature in that cab dropped like 30 degrees. I'm not exaggerating. My breath started fogging up immediately, and the heater was still blasting, but it didn't matter. The cold was coming from her. She sat down and just stared straight ahead through the windshield. Didn't look at me, didn't say thank you, didn't say anything. I could see her better now in the light from my dash. Her skin was paper white, like she hadn't seen sunlight in years, and that nightgown was dirty, stained with something dark that looked like dirt. I said, "Ma'am, you okay? You need me to call someone?" Nothing. Just silence. And after a few minutes, she finally spoke. Her voice was low and scratchy, like she hadn't used it in a very long time. She said, "Take me to the intersection." I said, "What intersection? There's nothing out here for miles." She just repeated it. "The intersection." I asked her again, but she wouldn't answer. Just kept staring ahead. I sat there for a minute, trying to figure out what to do. Finally, I put the truck in gear and started driving. I figured there was some intersection up ahead and I'd drop her there and be done with it. We drove in complete silence for about 15 minutes. The smell got worse. The cold got worse. My hands were shaking on the wheel. I kept glancing over at her, but her hair was still covering her face, and she never moved, never blinked. Every few minutes she'd whisper the same thing. The intersection. That scratchy voice, that smell, that cold. I've never been so scared in my life. Finally, I saw it up ahead. A county road, crossing the highway with a stop sign. No houses, no lights, no nothing, just desert in every direction. I pulled over and said, "This is it. This is the intersection." She turned to look at me. Her hair fell away from her face, and I saw what was underneath. I still have nightmares about it. Her face was gray and sunken, like she'd been dead for weeks. Her eyes were white with no pupils, just staring at me, and her neck was bent sideways at this horrible angle, like it was broken. She reached out and grabbed my arm. Her hand was freezing cold and so strong I couldn't pull away. Felt like iron. With her other hand, she pointed out the windshield. I looked where she was pointing, and there it was. It's an old car wrapped around a telephone pole about 50 feet off the road. It was rusted and beat up. The windows were busted out. It looked like it had been sitting there for years. She leaned close to me. That rotten smell filled my whole nose. Her mouth opened and she whispered, "This is where I died." I screamed and yanked my arm away. The second I did, she was gone. The passenger seat was empty. The door was still open, swinging in the wind. The smell was gone. The cold was gone. Just me alone in my truck, shaking so bad I could barely breathe. I reached over and slammed the door shut. Then I hit the gas and didn't look back. I drove as fast as that truck would go, and I didn't stop until I hit Fallon city limits. I was crying the whole way, scared out of my mind. When I finally pulled into my driveway, and I just sat there for a long time, couldn't move. Then I looked at my arm where she grabbed me. There were 5 dark bruises in the shape of fingers. I showed my wife the next morning. She didn't know what to say. The bruises stayed for 2 weeks. The next day, I called the sheriff's office in Eureka County. I told the dispatcher I needed to report something strange. They connected me to a deputy who listened to the whole story. He asked me to hold. A few minutes later, an older man came on the line. He said he'd been sheriff there for over 20 years. He asked me exactly where this happened. I told him the intersection about 40 miles east of Eureka. He was quiet for a long time, so long I thought he hung up. Then he said, in 2004, a young woman was hitchhiking home from Reno. Her car broke down, and she was trying to get to her aunt's house. A drunk driver hit her at that exact intersection, killed her instantly. Her neck was broken. We never identified her, never found any family. She's buried in the Paupers Cemetery right outside Eureka. No headstone, no nothing. I thanked him and hung up. I sat there for another hour just staring at the wall. I never drove that road at night again. I take the long way now, always. My wife thinks I'm crazy, but she doesn't argue. She saw those bruises. I'm not a believer in ghosts. Never was. But I know what I saw. I know what grabbed my arm, and I know that woman just wanted someone to know where she died. She wanted someone to remember. So if you're reading this and you're driving through Nevada late at night, be careful. And if you see someone standing on the shoulder in a white nightgown, just keep driving. Please, just keep driving. I'm 24 and I live in a small town in rural Indiana. I work a regular 9-to-5 job in a neighboring county, and I often drive long stretches of highway late at night after visiting friends. I've always been comfortable driving alone, never really considered myself the paranoid type, until that night happened. This happened about 3 years ago when I was driving back from a friend's place in rural Indiana. He lives about an hour and a half from me, and I had stayed later than I planned. By the time I got on the highway, it was a little after 2 o'clock at night. If you've ever driven through rural areas that late, you know how empty it feels. The kind of empty where it almost seems staged. No traffic in either direction. No lights in the distance. Just long stretches of road, surrounded by trees and open fields. All it's with nothing but your headlights cutting through the dark. I had music playing quietly and wasn't really thinking about much. I remember checking my mirrors out of habit and noticing I hadn't seen another car for at least 15 or 20 minutes. That's when I saw headlights appear behind me. At first, it didn't bother me. It's a highway. Eventually, someone else is going to be on it. The car was far enough back that I couldn't make out what it was, but close enough that I could see the steady glow of its headlights in my rear view mirror. A few minutes passed, and I noticed something strange. The car wasn't gaining on me. It also wasn't falling back. It was just maintaining distance. I sped up slightly, going about 10 miles over the limit. The headlights grew brighter in my mirror. The car had sped up too. I slowed back down to just under the speed limit. The car slowed down with me. That's when I started paying attention. Most drivers either pass you or drift farther back. It's rare for someone to sit directly behind you on an empty highway for that long without making a move. But this car stayed locked in position for nearly 10 minutes. I told myself I was overthinking it. Maybe they were tired. Maybe they didn't want to pass on a darker stretch of road. Then I changed lanes. Within a second, the car changed lanes too. No delay, no hesitation. The exact same movement. I waited a few moments, then switched back. It switched back again. At that point, it stopped feeling like coincidence. I felt that tight, uncomfortable pressure in my chest that you get when your instincts start warning you before your brain catches up. Thus, I checked my phone's GPS and saw there was a small gas station about 5 miles ahead near an exit. It was the only place open at that hour for miles. I decided I would pull off there. If the car kept going, I'd know I was being paranoid. If it followed me, I'd have my answer. The exit sign finally came into view. I turned on my signal earlier than necessary. The car's signal flashed almost immediately after. My stomach dropped. I took the exit ramp. So did it. The road curved toward the gas station, which was lit up by bright fluorescent lights that felt almost blinding after driving in total darkness. I remember feeling a brief sense of relief. There were cameras, there were lights. It wasn't isolated. I pulled into the lot and parked near the front. The car followed in and parked directly behind me. Not in another space, not near the pumps. Directly behind my car. Close enough that I couldn't reverse without hitting it. My hands started shaking. I stayed inside and locked my doors again, even though they were already locked. The headlights behind me stayed on, flooding my mirrors with white light. Almost 2 minutes passed with no movement. Then the driver's door of the car behind me opened. A man stepped out. He looked normal. Mid-30s, average build, jeans and a jacket. Nothing about him immediately screamed danger. That's probably what made it worse. He didn't walk toward the store. He walked toward me. Slowly. He stopped beside my driver's side window and just stood there. He didn't knock. He didn't tap the glass. He just stared in. Because of the angle and the glare from the station lights, I couldn't clearly see his face. But I could tell he wasn't smiling. After about 10 seconds, he leaned slightly toward the window and mouthed something. It took me a second to understand. "Your tire." He pointed toward the back of my car. For a moment, I felt confused. Was he actually trying to help me? I checked my side mirror and saw something dragging behind my rear tire. A thin strip of metal scraping against the pavement. It was long enough that it would have made noise. Maybe even sparks. My first thought was that I must have run something over. But I hadn't stopped anywhere since leaving my friend's driveway. And then I looked more closely. It wasn't tangled. It wasn't caught. It was secured. Fastened tightly to the rear frame of my car, deliberately. My chest felt hollow. That's when I realized something else. And the only car that had been behind me long enough to notice it was his. I looked back at him. His body language had changed. He wasn't gesturing anymore. He wasn't pretending to be helpful. He was just standing there, waiting, like he expected me to open the door. I don't know what instinct kicked in, but instead of unlocking it, I threw the car into reverse and hit the gas. My bumper slammed into his vehicle hard enough to jolt both cars. He stumbled backward, clearly not expecting it. I shifted into drive and sped out of the lot without looking back. In my rearview mirror, I saw him standing there in the bright lights of the gas station. He didn't chase me, he didn't yell, he just watched. I drove straight to the nearest police station. The officers checked underneath my car and confirmed the metal strip had been intentionally attached. It wasn't accidental road debris. It had been tightened into place. One of the officers told me it's a known tactic. Sometimes people will attach something that drags or makes noise, so the driver pulls over to investigate. Once the person steps out of the vehicle, especially late at night and alone, they approach under the excuse of helping. That's when the situation changes. The gas station footage captured his license plate. It turned out he had prior charges, including assault. I moved shortly after that. To this day, whenever I park somewhere at night, I take a slow walk around my car before getting in, because I learned something that night. Sometimes the threat isn't racing toward you in the dark. Sometimes it's already attached, and it's waiting for you to step out.